Russian special services tried to use Trump advisors, including Carter Page, to infiltrate the US presidential elections. That's according to the latest revelation by CNN. Citing anonymous officials, the channel suggested Page didn't know he'd been used by Moscow's agents. Well, Page says the allegations are groundless and even calls the initial report on alleged Russian meddling a political stunt.
If it turns out that the Russians interfered in an election, that would bother you. That's a layup. Why not take that overture?
If that were the case, Michael, and there was indisputable evidence that that was the case, then I would be totally behind it. Just reading that report 2 weeks before Inauguration Day, I might add, that makes me wonder whether this was really just a political stunt.
Well, to discuss this further, I'm now joined by Tim Young, political commentator and satirist. And this seems like a bit of a familiar theme, doesn't it, Tim? What do you make of the latest round of allegations about Russia's meddling in the US election? And do you think they'll ever end?
I don't know that they'll ever end. And I got to tell you, these unknown sources, you can make up anything that comes from an unknown source. I could come on your program right now and say that from an unknown source that is very credible, I'm the most attractive man on the planet. And then you just have to prove me wrong.
Well, coming back very quickly from that one, Carter Page denies the allegations, but CNN insists he must have been compliant. Well, let's just take a listen to what he said.
Look, you're presumed innocent of anything. You haven't been charged with anything. But FISA court found there was probable cause of you having committed a crime, presumably in cahoots with Russian authorities.
That information that you just cited, Michael, that, by definition, that leak is a felony. You're not supposed to be talking about that.
What evidence do you believe a FISA court judge would have reviewed to come to a conclusion that there was strong case, probable cause, that you committed a crime? Surely there was something.
That is a beautiful question, Michael. There is no possibility of probable cause.
Well, a beautiful question indeed. So why are they so convinced they're right? And does the presumption of innocence still matter in the US?
You know, here's the thing. It seems like to the left and the people who lost this last election that it doesn't matter. Everyone's automatically guilty. They're still trying to blame Russia months and months after this election for losing the election, and they're going after everyone. It was a very interesting interview, and of course Carter Page isn't going to admit. They were trying to get him to admit that he did something wrong or that there should have been probable cause. They were baiting him throughout that entire interview on CNN, and they just want every little nugget that they can get to blame the election on something other than the left and Hillary Clinton.
60 minutes. You saw that, right?
Well, some viewers were actually complaining that Page wasn't listened to and CNN were only trying to push their own agenda. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely, and that's what was going on. That entire interview, which was about 11 minutes long, it seemed like the interviewer had no desire to learn anything from Carter Page. He kept trying to bait him into admitting that the FISA court and someone else had some reason to connect him to a crime with Russia. It was kind of ridiculous.
Well, and as you say, yet another allegation against Russia, but more anonymous sources. Do you think they're hiding their identities, or do you think the sources don't actually exist?
You know what? If somebody's smart right now, they would go to a news organization, make up a hot-sounding story, and collect a paycheck on it. It could be either way. Like, these could be completely false stories that they're just running with a narrative, and who knows where they're coming from. It could be the Democratic National Committee making up these stories, or it could be someone, you know, that's just making profit off of it. But so far, there's been no conclusive evidence that anything has happened. So all of these sources are wrong.
Well, CNN broke this story on Saturday, but as we remember, a similar one was in the Washington Post 10 days ago. So what's actually new here, and why the obsession with so-called Russian meddling in the elections?
It's not necessarily an obsession with Russia as much as it's I'm not going to point a finger at myself for being wrong here. I'm going to point a finger at everyone else. The media in America, the mainstream media in America, does not like Donald Trump and loved Hillary Clinton, and they're looking for a scapegoat for losing this last election. And this may never end at this rate. This is becoming a ridiculous just kind of line of stories that's coming up to try to not take responsibility for losing an election.
Right, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much. Tim Young, political commentator and satirist, thank you very much for joining me.